Hi, Amos here. Back a few years ago, before headphones such as these Odyssey planars had been released, what was popular in a small section of the headphone community was old vintage planars such as these audio or vector scan slash Audio Technicas. The old Yamahas and some of the old PM-1 headphones were quite popular amongst a segment of the community that liked the particular sound of them. So it was a big joy for them to have companies like Odyssey and Hi-Fi Man come out with new models such as now what we have the LCD2s, LCD-X and LCD-XC, the Hi-Fi Man, first there was the HE5 and now we have HE500, 560 and HE6. However, unlike these old planars, these new planars were big and heavy, although the sound quality was probably much better. But still, I'm sure there's always a segment of the community that lusted after that lush, easy listening sound that you got out of these small headphones, but without the massive weight that they had. I mean, you can just pretty much chuck these in a bag, and I have, and taken them with me for just some casual, relaxing listening. And the sound is pretty good. Not ultra detailed, but still pretty good. So if you want to talk about coming out of left field, Oppo, the maker of, well, the BD series of everything in the kitchen sink players, and surprising to me, actually mobile phones as well, came out with the PM1s. And here it is, the lovely shiny box that they come in, and inside of which, of course, are the headphones with a cable. Very nice presentation, albeit with a box that's heavier than the headphones themselves. And that's where the next thing comes in, because unlike the big Odyssey and Hi-Fi Man headphones, which are very heavy, about half a kilo in kind of weight, the PM1s, if I get them out, are somewhat smaller and much lighter weight. Now, if I pop off one of the pads of the PM1 and have a look inside, if I can get a good handle on it, we will see something interesting. Have you seen a diaphragm of the LCD-X and LCD-XC? It is big. It has a big snake-like trace running all the way through it. It has big magnets and everything. This trace is small and circular, much like the small and circular trace in these old planars. So if anything, the Oppo PM1 is something of a probably more a true successor to the old planars like the old Yamahas than the big Odyssey and Hi-Fi Man planar headphones. And of course that means that this pair of headphones is actually quite lightweight. They're not heavy, and they're actually light enough, and with cups that you may have noticed by now swivel completely flat, light enough to be taken as a portable pair of headphones. So just like my old vector scans which I have here, these are the kind of size and weight which makes them good to chuck in a bag, although they're very high quality and expensive. You wouldn't want to chuck them directly in a bag if you don't want them scratched. We'll kind of take them somewhere and use them for kind of portable listening, which you kind of can't easily do with a pair of Odysseys or Hi-Fi Mans. However, they are open back, so they're not noise isolating, so they're not good for public transport, but I can envisage myself using these in, say, a hotel room, or if I'm traveling somewhere, staying at someone's house or something like that. They are conveniently portable, and in that manner they come with a zip-up travel case. So if I quickly pop them inside the travel case, there we go. You have a portable pair of planar headphones. That, I think, is a bit of a revelation. Now, talking of that, normally the PM1s come with this big, long cable. Now, if you think about Oppo, what do they make? They make the centerpiece of your home theater, the BD105, for example, which plays back all your media, it streams media from your computer, it does all that. And the idea with headphones for a lot of hi-fi people has been, when, say, the kids have gone to bed and all that, you can't turn up the volume late at night and listen to music. You'll either wake your family or you'll piss off the neighbours. So that's when you put on headphones. And in that manner, the standard headphone cable is quite long. You can see it there. Long enough to kind of plug into your system and sit back on your sofa almost, long enough. And it plugs into the PM1s via a couple of small TS jacks. 2.5mm TS jacks, which I'm sure the aftermarket cable makers are going to be highly annoyed by, being that they're quite small. Probably even more annoying than the H800 cables. Anyhow, if you are taking them to use portably, OPPO provide also with the PM1s a small cable for plugging into portable devices. Actually, it's so small, I'd almost say it's too short. And the occasional person has, plugged these in has found it even not quite long enough for some kind of things. But say, well, I wouldn't use them on an airplane, but it's enough that you can plug them into, say, an iPod or portable rig and kind of hold it in your hand, or maybe clip it to your belt if you're not too tall. So in that's pretty cool. Now, optionally for people who do not like leather pads, they even provide in the box a pair of soft pads, which there I'll get at one here. Now, these soft pads these material pads, non-leather pads I should say, they do change the sound a tiny bit, because every time you change the pad material on a pair of headphones, it does change the sound. So the sound is a little bit darker with these, but if you're, say, an animal liberation type person, or you just don't like leather, there, OPPO have provided for you. Now that brings me to fit and comfort. Now, as I said, the PM1s are quite lightweight, like something a bit heavier than your old plastic planers, but still very lightweight, something more like a conventional pair of headphones. Despite that, they are metal throughout where it's critical, and so their durability should be pretty good for the long term. Now, for my average size head, they fit very comfortably, and they don't look ridiculous like a pair of Odysseys do on my head. And the only problem with this is that if you have very large ears, you may find that the opening is a bit too small, and some people have complained about that, leaving OPPO at the moment scratching their head about designing some larger ear pads. However, for most people, you'll find, especially the clamping force, which is an issue on a lot of headphones, nobody likes having a vice on their head, and I'll say that the clamping force on this is perfect. They have just enough spring that they should fit most heads without any issue, and straight off the bat, especially with these just plush enough ear pads, I find the comfort to be excellent. So along with their sound, which I should get to in a minute, they are very relaxing to listen with. And of course the cable covered with a nice soft nylon is, again, it doesn't rub against you and irritate you like some headphones can. That brings me on to the sound. Now, the PM1s remind me something of the LCD2s when they first came out, because they had a sound signature that was flat through from the bass to 1 kHz before dropping off down through the treble. And likewise, the PM1s are almost exactly the same. So that means for some people, you're going to find that the sound signature is lush and easy to listen to and very relaxing. Other people are going to consider that sound signature to be very muffled and lacking in treble and upper mids and treble. So one way or the other, you're either going to really like them or really dislike them. And an ironic thing here is that the OPPO's HA1 has something of a easygoing sound signature as well, although it's not rolled off or anything like that. The combination of both the PM1s and the HA1s I found too much, and too relaxing and too easy to listen to, and a bit too dark. But if anything, the PM1s are something like the Odyssey LCD-Xs. However, there are of course some differences. If we pop off a pad again and have a look at the diaphragm area is of course much smaller, and it is focused by this, what the designer calls a mandarin, which is designed to focus the sound precisely on your ears. And unlike vintage planers, at least the ones I've been familiar with, the diaphragm is corrugated to make it more rigid, so that the movements of the diaphragm are more precise, and there's a lot of reinforcing in there. Now, a lot of this detail you can see in pictures actually over at Tyle Hertz's site, Inner Fidelity. He's done an awesome write-up, which is way better than anything I can do, because he has been talking to the designer for some months. Anyhow, the net result is actually, even though it is tricky with treble, if there's a lower treble to perceive detail, I didn't find that I was losing anything detail-wise, or not much detail-wise, compared to the LCD-Xs. However, that being said, the diaphragm opening is smaller compared to the big planers, and the soundstage seemed to be smaller. At least my perceived soundstage seemed to be smaller and less expansive than coming out of the big Odyssey planers. However, when I did plug the PM1s into the Hugo versus plugging them into OPPO's own HA1, I did notice an increase in detail, which did suggest that they do scale up well as a pair of headphones. So in that regard, overall, I'm going to have to agree with Tile over at Inner Fidelity. I'd take these over a pair of LCD2s purely because of what they're capable of delivering and the fact that I can fold them up, put them in a case, and take them with me somewhere. However, that being said, you have to like the lush kind of sound and maybe find something of a good pairing in terms of equipment if you're taking them somewhere as a portable unit. So back when I first heard the Oppo PM1s in Tokyo, I was asked how much did I think they were worth, and my answer was I thought if they were priced somewhere around the LCD2s, they'd give the Odyssey headphones quite a run for their money, and I think many people agree with me. Certainly I agree with Tile at Inner Fidelity. I'd take these over a pair of LCD2s because they give me a lot of potential in a pair of headphones that I think is really more a successor to the old vintage planers, much more so in many respects than some of the big Odysseys and Hi-Fi Mans are. So I don't doubt in the slightest that other companies are going to come out with something similar, because these have certainly set quite a high bar. If you like their sound signature and you have good equipment to match, you will really enjoy a pair of these Oppos. And once again, thank you for watching my video, and I look forward to seeing you on HeadFi.